Okay, the first project is minus 22.7 degrees by Jan Kounen. Okay, and here is.
I'm not Jan Kounen, but.
Okay, yeah, same.
Is it mine or yeah? Thank you. Hello everyone. I'm Aurélie Leduc from the French company Zorba, and we are the producers of minus 22.7 degrees. Well, minus 22.7 degrees is the lowest temperature measured by the musician Molecule in the little village of Tinitekilak in Greenland. Well, what was he doing there? Why would a musician decide to go to Greenland? Because he wanted to study the silence. But even in this place, even in the heart of the far north, the absolute silence does not exist. So he decided to record the inaudible sounds of the polar nature there, such as the cracks of the icebergs or the breath of the ice flow. And it's not working. And okay, that way. And then he used those sounds to make music. So when he came back to Paris, he brought back new songs for his new album, of course, and he also brought back a life-changing experience. Because when he was there, completely alone, recording sounds on the ice floe, he had a very powerful personal experience. Because he reconnected with the nature as he was listening very deeply to it. And he also reconnected with his own self and felt very close to his true emotions and feelings. So he had an almost mystical experience in Greenland. So when he told us his story and we listened to his music, we've been very moved by his bold adventure. And we wanted to share it as accurately as possible. So that's why we created a docufiction in virtual reality to make you live what Molecule experienced in Greenland. So we want this experience to open your ears and check up your emotions as it did for him. So during 12 minutes, you'll be in Molecule's place, totally alone in Greenland. And you will have to explore and listen very carefully to the sounds of the nature around you in order to find your way through this initiatory trip under extreme conditions. So you will be navigating between two dimensions. The first dimension that we call the real dimension, where you will discover the beautiful but dangerous nature of Greenland, and it will be made of live action shots of Greenland. And the second dimension that we call the inner or introspective one, that will be made in real-time 3D animation. And in this dimension, you will have to face and cope with your deep emotions and fears. So for this VR experience, we needed sensitive and experienced filmmaker. So that's why we have it directed by Jan Kounen, to ensure powerful storytelling and imagery. The experience is co-written with Molecule, the artist, and with Amaury Laburte from the French company Novelab. He's notably the producer of the famous VR experience Notes on Blindness, and he will be in charge of the sound and interactive design of the experience. We are very lucky to be in co-production with Arte France and also with JV Group and Novelab, our French co-producers. Technically speaking, the VR experience is designed for VR headsets and also for Arte 360 degrees web player. So there will actually be two versions of the experience, an interactive one and a non-interactive linear one for Arte web player and the social medias. For this VR experience, we are actually looking for international broadcasters and investors to complete the very last part of the post-production budget. And besides, we are also working on a dome version of the VR experience. The idea of this dome version is to create a collective experience this time, and it will associate live performance from Molecule with a 360 degrees interactive film. So basically it will mix live music with 360 degrees projections with a strong storytelling. So the idea with this dome version is to create a real show, so it's gonna last about 50 to 60 minutes. And with this dome version, we want to address the music tour and event market, which is completely complementary to the VR market and with a high potential. So for minus 22.7 degrees, we really want to address the cinema and VR audience, of course, but also the music audience, and for example, the people who are going to Molecule concerts. So for this dome version, we are looking for, actively looking for partners to design and fund this version. So the whole project will be released in April 2019, and along with the documentary as well. Well, thank you for your attention. I'll be here this Saturday to meet you to talk about this project. Thank you.
Very interesting project. Thank you. Okay, the second project is Lake Baikal, the Science, Spirituality and Politics of Extreme Water by Michael Owen and Georgy Molodtsov. That's right?
That's correct.
Hello.
Hello. So, where are we? How do I do both? I should have practiced
Can I help
for this.
you?
Okay.
Okay.
I think we'll manage. Lake
Okay, let's
Baikal, as you probably know, is located in Siberia, the Russian Federation. Lake Baikal is the oldest, deepest, most voluminous body of liquid fresh water on planet Earth. It holds 20% of the liquid water, which is equal to the total of all the North American Great Lakes combined. It's also a relatively pristine landscape because of its remote location, and it's a destination for visitors who want to really experience and celebrate the wonders of nature. Lake Baikal was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1996. And the lateral beauty of the lake has attracted and been a site where three major religious groups have gathered. First, you have the shamanic faith of the indigenous peoples in the region. It then became a center of Buddhism brought by Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire. And then in the last several centuries, the Russian Orthodox faith. So I should catch up now with the beauty of Lake Baikal and the Buddhists and more recent Orthodox faiths. Science is also an important component of our project. There are thousands of endemic species of flora and fauna that produce an intricate food web that encompasses cell diatoms to the here we have the diatom to the charismatic megafauna of the lake, which is the nerpa, the freshwater seal, which is at the top of the food chain. But despite all of this interesting science and religion, we have issues that the lake is in danger. We have rising water temperatures as a result of global warming. The surface water temperature of the lake has risen 2 degrees Celsius between 1977 and 2003, as well as human waste and unprocessed water being returned to the lake from the communities. which has led to these algae epidemics, which kill off, through absorbing all the oxygen, all the wildlife in the regions near the shore. So what can people do? Basically, one of the most important things is to end the use of phosphates in detergents. Russia is one of the few countries in the world that hasn't already done so. And then we also need to make sure that treatment plants are built that are able to sustain the growing populations and increase tourism in the area. So now we have to ask ourselves, why VR is a solution. In March of 2016, my colleague Georgy Molodtsov and I filmed the Lake Baikal in a sort of winter state for Google Expeditions. These are sets of school trips, virtual school trips with stills. And then we turned that into a short video that has now been screened at festivals around the world. And we've been trying to find a way to take that sort of test of that's been well accepted of people seeing Lake Baikal and turn it into a documentary that includes the both spiritual and more scientific information. But a lot of that information is not really suited to 360 linear video. We need to include 2D images, such as the diatoms that you saw before, and the footage shot underneath the lake at great depth, at great expense. We could not do this for just a VR project. And so we have taken some data that was gathered by the INTAS. It's a European Union-funded survey of Lake Baikal in 1999-2000 that created a bathymetric map of Lake Baikal, something along those lines. And I've found a Canadian company that specializes in geological VR simulations to create a map that would let us create a 3D model that people can in fact walk through to understand the dimensions of the lake, and then use that as a point of interfacing the actual 360 and 2D visual elements that exist about the film, and use this as the way of telling the story about the lake. So that is what we are now trying to do. Raise the funds to complete the project, do a 360 shoot in summertime, tell the story about how people are combating the use of phosphates in the lake, the need to improve treatment, as well as the scientific elements, with many of which are in 2D, and then combine them all together. If anyone wants to meet me or talk about the project, I have the existing 360 film available to show people, and would love to describe the project further for anyone who's interested and would like to meet. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Very interesting project. Oh, let's stop. Okay. So the next is Leonardo, Dubs of a Genius by Matteo Leonardi. Hello. This for you.
Hello, my name is Matteo Lonardi. I am a journalist and VR filmmaker. I've been focusing on VR documentaries, talking about the role that artists have to tell stories about politics. My last project was called Reframe Saudi, which you guys can see here until Sunday, and it's about Saudi Arabian artists and censorship. The other project that I did recently was Reframe Iran, part of a series that looked at Iranian artists and their relationship with exile. So this time, so today I am presenting a project that still puts the artist at the center of the story. This time I'm focusing on someone a bit more famous that everyone knows here, Leonardo da Vinci. But we are trying to see Leonardo from a completely different angle. You probably all know that Leonardo was a genius, an artist, a scientist, but what you probably don't know was that Leonardo was one of the biggest failures throughout his career. He had a very hard time to finish what he started. And this became clear by the end of his career when most of his patrons didn't believe that he could finish anything. So this is an experience, this is a VR experience about failure. And why failure? Failure is one of the feelings that we have, that as artists, probably here, many people have experienced, but it's also something that we are kind of denied. You know, on Facebook and Instagram, you always experience, you're always bombarded with images of success. Everyone wants to, how do you say? Everyone wants to show success. And, but through this experience, we'll be able to see failure from an artist's perspective. The artist is able to transform failure into a work of art, which is something inherently constructive. So we're going to see failure through the lens of Leonardo. We're placing the story in his studio. It's 1515. Leonardo is in Rome, and nobody of his patrons believes he can do or he can make. Nobody is commissioning anything to him. He's at the borders of Rome, in the outskirts of the city, in a very small studio that is given to him by Pope Leo X. And we enter the studio as Leonardo is writing a letter. He's writing a letter to Giuliano de' Medici, who is his patron. And he ends the letter saying, "Because I'm a liar and a cheat." This is a letter that he actually wrote to Giuliano. The viewer is outside of the room. He sees Leonardo writing the letter from behind a window, which actually is a mirror. And something drops. Leonardo turns around and sees the viewer. So as he mirrors himself, he looks at himself in the mirror, and repeats the words, "I'm a liar and a cheat." The user is transferred inside of Leonardo. So the user becomes Leonardo. But how do we get the user to identify with Leonardo? We need to create a shared experience of failure, of trauma, to put the audience inside of what it means to fail and how to transform it. So Giuliano de' Medici is going to come in the room and he's going to address Leonardo. He's going to address him in a way that is vague, in the sense that he's not going to go and criticize him about this or that work, but he's going to criticize him in a way that any one of us could relate. So, you know, you have great, how do you say, you have great potential, but, you know, why don't you finish what you do, Leonardo? Why don't you finish what you do? So we want to put the viewer in this condition of being the victim of this criticism. And after, you know, a few comments, a dialogue between Giuliano and his attendant, we will get to this feeling of exclusion, of inadequacy, that will culminate in a phase of crisis, where the viewer really will feel through sounds, through cinematic elements, we will make the viewer feel nearly a feeling of rage. From there, we will enter a dream of Leonardo that he constantly had and he wrote about in his diaries. And through this dream, we will get the user to re-elaborate and process the trauma. The user will still be in first person Leonardo and will see this bird, an hawk, coming into a room. The room is, the studio in this case will be reimagined, so it will be the same space, but the studio will be reimagined into a nursery, so where Leonardo used to sleep as a baby. So Leonardo looks at himself as a baby, an hawk comes in the room, a very dangerous bird, and then another scene opens. We'll see the father of Leonardo talking to the user. Here we will discover the source of the trauma, the source of Leonardo's failure. And at this point, the user will be confronted with two options. Either they can go forward and go back to the studio, or they can stay in this situation, in this very dark situation, and linger and be stuck in failure. Going forward in the story, they will be able to interact with Leonardo's work, and as they stroke a painting of Leonardo, the ambience around will become peaceful, a sense of fulfillment. We will create a sense of fulfillment in the room. hoping to give the user this impression of having had a journey and of having been able to sublimate failure into something positive. So we think that I think this is a project that really is very timely. Next year we have the 500 years from Leonardo's death, so there's going to be hundreds of events all over the world. This will create a very interesting and wide audience for the project. And we already are talking with museums around the world who can help us screen the project. We are looking for production companies to help us part fund the project. We already secured some funding, and I will be here until Sunday to talk with all you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's amazing.